Right now, lawmakers are holding a press conference at Ground Zero. They are praising the House passage of a new bill that would permanently extend the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund. But they're also calling for the Senate to move quickly and pass the bill as it heads there next. Let's listen in.
If you remember 9/11, you remember that we as a nation vowed to never forget. We will not rest until Congress turns this promise into a law. I want to underscore that this is a national issue. New York was attacked because they wanted to attack America and the Pentagon and the Capitol, and it is a national responsibility. We proved that out of the 435 congressional districts, 433 have some of their residents in the program. Mitch McConnell must bring this bill to the floor for a vote, I hope immediately. It's the least we can do as a grateful nation. God bless our first responders, our heroes, and God bless America. Thank you very much. And now I turn to the great senator from the great state of New York, Chuck Schumer.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Carolyn. I want to thank you and Jerry Nadler, excuse me, and all the House members who have done such a great job getting this bill done and passing it overwhelmingly. But above all, I want to thank our first responders. Names like Zadroga and Pfeiffer and Alvarez are the 21st century versions of Washington and Madison and Jefferson. They are our heroes. They are the greatness of America. And just as we should never forget the sacrifice of the people 230 years ago who made this country free, we should not forget the sacrifice of the people who rushed to the tower to keep America free. And we should never forget, excuse me, we should never forget them. And I want to thank all the people here who have done so much, from our great first responders community, our union and labor community, and all of the New York community. But as Carolyn said, it's an American issue. Now, I have 5 letters for Senator McConnell. C-L-E-A-N, clean. I have 1 word for Senator McConnell, clean. This bill has passed the House. It has gotten the support of both the Democratic and Republican leaderships. No games. Do not attach this bill to something else where it might get messed up, as it has gotten messed up in the past. Do not say that we're going to use this bill to help pass a debt ceiling or a budget or something else. That always leads to things getting messed up. This bill should pass as is. If it's good enough for Leader McCarthy and Whip Scalise, the 2 leaders of the Republicans in the House, it's good enough for McConnell in the Senate. Don't play games. Don't talk about using this in some kind of political strategy. That's when the first responders lose out, when they become political pawns. We have made our voices clear. This must pass now. This not half of it, not 3/4 of it, all of it now. If McConnell would put this bill on the floor this week, it would go to the president's desk this week, be signed into law, and all these folks who have worked so hard for so long can go home and tend to their brethren, I guess ancestrin, I don't know if that's the right word, tend to their brothers and sisters who need help, instead of having to come to Washington to lobby over and over and over again and ask people to do what they should have done all along, the right thing. Do not play political games with our brave first responders. Put the bill on the floor clean, and we will get this done. We can get it done this week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This morning represents, I hope, almost the end of a long, long journey. A journey that began on September 11th, 2001, when this nation was attacked here, not New York, not Shanksville, Pennsylvania, but the entire nation was attacked here by terrorists from abroad. When so many first responders, police people, and fire people, and iron workers, and everybody else rushed in to help people and to save lives at the risk of their own. And that proceeded for weeks and months of federal government people lying to the first responders, lying to the people who lived in the community, lying to the people who went to school and worked in the community by saying the air is safe to breathe when they knew it wasn't safe to breathe, and telling people come back to work on Wall Street, go, send your kids back to high school or college here. And many, many people are sick today because of that. So we have two, I always say at these press conferences, we have two moral burdens. One, we must, in Lincoln's words, care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, for the victims of the terrorism. And two, care for all the people, first responders who worked on the pile or near the pile for months without proper respiratory equipment because they were told the air was safe to breathe, residents, workers, students, survivors who are sick today and will get sick tomorrow because they were misinformed deliberately by U.S. government officials, by the head of the EPA, by the then mayor of the city of New York, who were told it was safe to breathe when it wasn't, and when we knew it wasn't, and when some of us were yelling, don't listen to them. So that's two moral burdens. One of the most emotional moments in my career was in 2010 when I was able to stand on the floor of the House and call up the Zadroga bill for consideration, and we passed it. When we struggled for the Zadroga bill, Carolyn and myself and Peter King and Chuck and Hillary Clinton and others, we had a lot of opposition. Most of the Republicans, with the notable exception of Peter King and a few others, weren't with us. But we passed it. As the years have gone by and the evidence has mounted, many of the Republicans, most of them, almost all of them now, have come around. And we're grateful for that. We're grateful that we have bipartisan support. And we're grateful that we were able to extend the health program till 2090, 5 years ago, but the victims' compensation program only 5 years. We would not have been able to do it if we didn't have the survivors and the first responders and the police officers and the veterans from the fire department, the sick people coming to Washington all the time, along with people like John Field and John Stewart. But they shouldn't have to keep coming to Washington. It was a sacrilege that they had to come and beg for what a grateful nation should have given out of moral responsibility. So now we've come to the final, hopefully the final stage. We passed the bill almost unanimously in the House, 402 to 12. That's quite a change from previously, but the evidence is so stark and the victims so clear. And now we ask that Senator McConnell bring this up for a bill, bring this up for a vote, a clean vote on the floor of the House, as he promised to do before the August recess. Let there be at least some peace of mind among the survivors and the first responders that they don't have to worry about this anymore, that the VCF as well as the health program will be extended to 2090 in effect indefinitely, that they won't have to drag themselves to Congress again. They shouldn't have to come and beg in Congress for what a grateful nation morally owes them. So we hope that this is the next to last press conference. We've had many, many before.
Last one will be a happy one.
We hope the last one, well, this is a happy one too, because we've made a major step. We hope the next one will be in a few days and will be a happy one. And we hope it's finally, at least the legislative part of it, the government part of it, finally done. But it's up to Senator McConnell, and we urge him to do the right thing, as Chuck said. So I want to thank, since this may be my second to last time to do it, to thank all the people, all the survivors, all the first responders, and John Field and John Stewart and all the union people for coming down to Washington all the time, for working on this all the time, for holding our feet to the fire all the time, and for helping the United States meet a great moral burden. Thank you.
Thank you. After after 9/11, signs appeared at the site and across the city calling on labor to come to the site. Report to duty, iron workers, retirees, apprentices, come to the site. And they came to the site and helped rebuild, and we are fortunate to have many of the labor leaders with us today. The first people to the site reported by the City of New York was the fire department. Within 5 seconds, they were here on the site. They lost 343 people that day, 200 since because of illnesses, and over 11,000 are in the program because of cancers and other related illnesses. We are extremely honored to have the head of the International Union here with us, General President Harold Scheitberger, and also the head of the United Fire Officers Association, President Jake LaMonda, and the Firefighters Association President Gerard Fitzgerald. We thank them for what they did that day, and for the locals across this nation that played a vital part in getting the support of their Congress members to support the bill. We went to the floor on Friday with 320 co-sponsors. That's an astronomical amount. So first, I'd like to call the head of the International to speak to us, followed by our local leaders.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm really here on behalf of 317,000 of our members across these United States to congratulate, but really recognize the incredible work that so many have done over this long journey. Certainly, I want to express my thanks to UFA, President Gerard Fitzgerald, his board, UFOA, and Jake LaMonda, the president, and his board. But it's also the incredible work of John Field and the Field Foundation, and Ben Shavat, and the Building Trades Council, and the PBA, the New York AFL-CIO. There are so many that have worked so hard to bring us to this point today. And we're at this point after a long journey. And some may have forgotten the slog that we've been a part of, and that these leaders of our nation have been working on behalf of, starting in 2005 with the first introduction of the first bill, which then met such opposition, unfortunately, in the Senate.
Yep.
And many, Mr. Leader, may not remember that that first vote in the Senate in 2010, which failed in December 9th, was rescued by you.
Thank you.
And brought back to the Senate floor for passage, which ultimately became the final vote in that Congress. There's a lot of work to be done. There's so many to thank and appreciate. But certainly our focus right now is to work with all of those that are respecting and honoring the names that are associated with this incredible measure. And that is just simply symbolic and a legacy that we all have to embrace. James Sadroga, Ray Pfeiffer, and Luis Alvarez. And they represent the hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of those that worked on this site in the days, weeks, and months that followed that horrific attack on September 11th. I would just say this as somebody that's been a part of the effort for a long time.
More than a part, great part.
And that is, we still have a lot of work to do.
Yep.
And our
That's
Senate
right.
leader will help to assure that that work is done, just like Chairman Nadler helped to assure that that committee passed the bill unanimously and sent it to the House floor. But I also have to say that that work to be done comes with a focus that the Senate rules, and it only takes one or two to muck up the mechanism and to try to block this progress. And as Senator Schumer has said, we've got to demand and work toward a clean vote on a clean bill. There's no reason it shouldn't take place before the Senate leaves in August for their recess. So on behalf of the IFF, I just want to thank you, Congressman Maloney, Senator Schumer, Chairman Nadler, and so many others on the House and Senate side that have done so much to bring this issue to where we are today. Thank you.
Good job. Gerald.
Good morning. I'm Gerard Fitzgerald, president of the Uniformed Firefighters Association. There's not a lot more I could say that everybody else hasn't said already, but I'll try. I want to thank the New York delegation, and some people have said this is a celebratory presser. It is not.
No.
This is as Carolyn Maloney has said, that we're passing the baton on from the House now to the Senate, and the likes of John Field and John Stewart and the UFA, the UFOA, the IAFF, the laborers, the AFL-CIO, the CLC, everybody that's represented here. The PBA is represented in all the other police unions that to put pressure. What happened down in D.C. a couple of weeks ago with Louis Alvarez's testimony and John Stewart's testimony brought a human element that was needed again to do this. Ray Pfeiffer did it before Louis Alvarez, and before Ray was Zadroga. We had John McNamara. We had many firefighters and police and civilians have gone down there and have showed their sickness. But Louis Alvarez, I mean, it was unbelievable what was seen that day, and then John's heartfelt testimony was also there. I'm running away with this a little bit. I apologize, but what we hear is to put pressure on the Senate to keep up the hard work. The House did their thing. Now it's the Senate's turn to do that, and it's the right thing. It's very simple. Keep it simple, pass it, and let's get this done. Let's not have to bring anybody that's sick or dying anywhere. Let them be with their families at peace. Let them feel the economic support. Let them feel the gratefulness of a grateful nation. Let's get this done. Let's not have to do this again. Thank you very much.
I like a good New York accent out here.
Yeah, it's the Brooklyn, bro. It's the Brooklyn.
Good morning. I'm Jake Lamonda, president of the Uniformed Fire Officers Association, and I gather here along with my executive board and many others. I want to remind everybody, this is a battle that began right after 9/11, 2001. There has been so many faces to this fight, but we came together as one voice. Many faces, one message: to protect those who responded on that dreadful day. We stood up for our nation. We helped our nation rise from the ashes, and we stood tall. The House has stood tall alongside us. I'm going to ask Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand, our leaders in New York State, to take that step forward, to take the message from New York and these hallowed grounds, and let's bring it down to Washington. Let's end this fight, because this should not be a fight. This is about Americans helping Americans. So let's get this done, and I want to thank everybody that's been involved, because truly there are so many faces, but we're one voice. Thank you.
No one brought more heart and soul to the fight than John Field. He worked on the pile. He's permanently injured because of his work there that day. And he turned his life into helping others, founding the Feel Good Foundation. He always made us laugh, even in the darkest of days when we didn't think we could pass the bill. He organized over 200 visits to Congress, bringing large numbers of people down. 40 members of the Feel Good Foundation came down on Friday to meet with the Speaker and with others, and to encourage all of us to come forward. So, John, we thank you not only for your brilliant work, but for heightening the highs and softening the lows during this long, long struggle. You are a rock on which to lean for so many of us, particularly those that were hurt and injured. John, thank you. Is your sidekick here? John.
Yes.
Bravo.
Bravo. Bravo.
On Friday, I said it took a village, and it's going to still take a village. We're not here to spike a football today. In fact, when we get the bill passed, we won't spike a football.
When we get a bill passed, people are still going to die. Cops, firefighters, construction workers, Red Cross volunteers. But we can offer their families comfort and relief. We can offer them the financial assistance when they're burdened from losing a loved one. On Friday, I also said it wasn't about legislation anymore. It was about the bond. It was about the friendships. The friendships like with Richie Alley's, who has blessed Carolyn Maloney with her summer wear fire jacket. And Michael Barish, who's been nothing but generous with his time and his resources. And to the unions, and to everybody else, it took a village. I've already been in contact with Mitch McConnell's office this morning. We are going to get a bill passed. That's a given. But at what cost? Because people are going to die. I'm going to go to more funerals. I want to share a story with everybody, and then I'm going to leave. I want to publicly say this because I've said it in private. I had to apologize to Jen McNamara. I had to apologize to Karen Pfeiffer. And I had to apologize to the Alvarez family in D.C. the other day. See, we knew John and Ray and Louis were dying. But I also knew, by making them the face of the movement, that we would get legislation passed. It's that simple. We tugged at the heartstrings of Congress and the Senate, except for 12 people who voted against us. So I said, Jen, Karen, and the Alvarez family, what I did was perverted and twisted and selfish. I am sorry that I knew your loved ones were going to die. But we need them. Their passing and their deaths will help us get legislation that will help tens of thousands of people. It created a World Trade Center help program, and it's going to create a VCF that's permanently extended. So out loud, to the McNamara family, the Pfeiffer family, and the Alvarez family, I am sorry. I am embarrassed that I did that to your loved ones. But in speaking to Ray and Louie and John, this is what they wanted. So when I made that ask to them, they were all right with it. But I'm still not at ease with myself with that because it's been eating at me. And if we're going to come clean, then I want to apologize to everybody that I pissed off. And I know that list is long. But at the end of the day, I hold more compassion than anybody here. I am a kidney donor to a complete stranger. I have walked the halls of Congress for 15 years. I've had 38 surgeries. I need 2 hip replacements and a knee replacement. I have put my own self through the mill for everybody here. Whether you like me or not, I really don't care anymore. But I'm going back to D.C., and I'm going to finish what I started.
I say the true Twin Towers of New York are New York's finest and New York's bravest, our police and our fire. And representing our fire department is Pat Hendry. He's the treasurer of the Police Benevolent Association. I do want to thank Patty Lynch for playing such an important role in the drafting of the legislation. He would not approve it until cancers were covered. And at the time, we couldn't prove that cancers were related to 9/11, even though you knew it would happen eventually. We created an entire system that would review new sicknesses and add them. We have added many, many more cancers due to his effort in insisting that cancers be covered. And that, by the way, is why the Victims' Compensation Fund is running out of money, is the high spike of cancers that are taking place now. Pat Hendry. Pat? Great.
Thank you.
New York's finest.
The Victims' Compensation Fund is doing an impossible job. For every person who lost a loved one that day, for every police officer, firefighter, or trade person who sacrificed their health in the months that follow, the VCF is attempting to lighten the burden and ease the pain. It is an impossible job, but it is a necessary job, and that job is far from finished. It is my great pleasure to thank Congresswoman Maloney and the rest of the New York congressional delegation for their tireless effort and support in getting this bill through the House. Their effort and fight has got us one step closer to a reauthorization for our heroes. The VCF needs to be able to continue its work, especially for the families of police officers and first responders who made the ultimate sacrifice. We have lost more than 200 members of the NYPD to this 9/11 injury and illness. That number will keep growing for many years to come. Our brother, Detective Luis Alvarez's name has been added to this bill, along with our brother, Ray Pfeiffer from the FDNY. We are running out of time. We must pass this bill before we have to add any more names. The heroes of 9/11 that day did their job. James Zadroga, Lou Alvarez, Ray Pfeiffer, they did their job. The House has done its job. It is time for the Senate to do its job. Our heroes that day sacrificed everything to pull our city and country together. They should never be left wanting again. The Senate needs to do the right thing and pass this bill now.
We agree. Denny Alvarez, president of the New York Central Labor Council. They helped put together so many meetings, and they were a rock leaders on this whole effort. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman Maloney, and thank you, of course, Senator Schumer and Congressman Nadler as well. Our elected officials have done their job. We've heard that, and I will just say very briefly that it's time for us to do our job to help you and all of us to continue to come together to carry this through. Our leaders, of course, throughout the labor movement, our leaders in all of the unions of the first responders, in the New York City unions, with the building trade unions, and of course our state AFL-CIO that has been leading this fight and out there on the front lines, making sure that this bill has progressed to the point that it's gotten today. We hear often 9/11 was 18 years ago, it was a long time ago, but there is a stark reality that these families of the first responders are having to deal with this each and every day. They deal with it on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis, and of course they're going to have to deal with it in the future. So we will do everything that we can as the city's largest labor movement, with some of the bravest men and women from all of the different unions that responded on that fateful day, to continue to support the work that is going to need to take place in order to bring this across the finish line and to get the well-deserved support that these families will need for the days and the months and the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Denny. Mario Salento, president of the state AFL-CIO and representative for the Citizens for the Extension of the James Zadroga Act.
Go ahead. Thank you, Carolyn. I just want to be very, very brief. I want to thank Carolyn Maloney and Jerry Nadler, and of course, Senator Schumer, on behalf of the 2.5 million members of the New York State AFL-CIO and the entire labor movement. You know, right shortly after the original Zadroga Act was passed on a temporary basis, the state AFL-CIO joined together with all of the unions here, the building trades, other public sector unions and private sector unions, to form the Citizens for the Extension of the Zadroga Act, which is a grassroots advocacy group that focuses on emails and phone calls and in-person visits. And looking at the results from last week, the overwhelming vote in the Congress and the 72 bipartisan support members we have in the Senate, they've done a great job. And these are men and women who do not like to take thanks, but I think we all owe them a debt of gratitude for what we've been able to get thus far. So the reality is this: we know there is one hurdle above us, and we're not surprised by it. We know it's the highest hurdle, but we also know this, that we have the support of everybody here and everybody across this country at this point in time, and we will get this done. And I will just say this: we reach out to all senators, all 100 of them across the country, and we say to you all, regardless of your party, regardless of what state you come from, regardless of your ideology, we ask you to urge Senator McConnell to bring this to the floor immediately and get it passed now. Because the reality is this: if we want to consider ourselves an enlightened society, and whatever we think that means in terms of enlightenment, if we want to consider ourselves an enlightened society, then we can and we will and we should be judged by how we treat those who need our help the most. And the reality is these brave men and women need our help more now than ever before, because, in fact, we are so close, because they have come too far for too long to be denied. And only then, after they pass it in the Senate, can we even begin to consider ourselves enlightened. And we will work with all of you to get this done. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Gary LaBarber, president of the Building and Construction Trades Council of Greater New York. They played a critical day on that terrible day, but he played a major role in pulling us together, putting the pieces together, the funding together to move forward with the rebuilding. Gary LaBarber, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you very much. Thank you. First, let me thank Congresswoman Maloney, Congressman Nadler, Senator Schumer, New York delegation, and all their colleagues that have passed this bill in Congress. As we have heard repeatedly, there is more work to be done, and that is to have this passed in the Senate, because it is the right and moral and the American thing to do. I want to also extend my deepest gratitude to my brothers and sisters in the uniformed services, the firefighters, police department, NYPD, NYFD, for all of their tireless work that they put into making this a reality year after year. And I want to share a brief story with you to hopefully make this palatable and tangible. I remember well a morning in May when we had the last column ceremony, bringing the last column, which is now in the World Trade Center Memorial, out of the hole. And that day, the column was placed on a flatbed trailer and was brought up. And on each side of the roadway were hundreds of workers and firefighters and police officers. And it did not matter whether you wore a badge or you wore a helmet or you wore a hard hat. We stood shoulder to shoulder as one, as brothers and sisters. And we will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder as one, as brothers and sisters in this fight. There is work to be done. Let's get it done. And again, I echo my brother from the NYPD, to Senator McConnell. Do not delay. Get this done. It is the right thing, it is the moral thing, and it is the American thing. Thank you very much.
Bravo. Representing the survivors is Lila Nordstrom, a survivor advocate, executive director of Stuyvesant Health. She was a student at Stuyvesant High School. She was told to come back to school. Her story is regrettably the sad story of many people who are suffering as she is. Lila.
Thank you. My name is Lila Nordstrom, and as Congressman Maloney said, I was a student at Stuyvesant, which is only about 3 blocks from here, on 9/11. Stuyvesant was evacuated on the day, but we returned to Lower Manhattan less than a month after the attacks to a contaminated building based on false assurances from the EPA that the air down here was safe to breathe. And what followed was 8 months of exposure to toxic smoke and dust and debris, the same exposures that many of the responders themselves had, which imperiled the health of tens of thousands of public school students who were sent back to school in this area, thousands of teachers and school staff, not to mention hundreds of thousands of residents and office workers who also returned to this area based on those same lies. Thanks to the hard work of a lot of the people here today, the House took action last week to ensure that the Victim Compensation Fund wouldn't expire. This is a really vital program for the 9/11 survivor community. It helps us in some of our scariest and darkest moments, but we need to see some commitments from the Senate now. We need to set a date to vote and make sure that this program is protected, and we will keep going down to Washington as many times as it takes, but frankly, fewer visits would be better at this point, because we have all been down there quite a bit, as I'm sure that Congressman Nadler and Congresswoman Maloney can attest. I myself made my first trip down to Washington to advocate for the needs of 9/11 survivors in 2006. I was 22 years old. I went back in 2009 and 2010 for the passage of the Zadroga Act. I went back 5 years later to advocate for the renewal, and I'll go back as many times as it takes, but I have spent my entire 20s and half of my 30s walking the halls of Congress, telling the story of the scariest day and the scariest year of my life, telling stories about my personal health issues, about those of my friends, all of this in excruciating detail and on repeat. These are really hard trips to make. Every trip down there is a reminder that the government used us to make sure that Wall Street was back on its feet instead of taking care of the children that were in the direct line of this attack. Every trip is a reminder that there is a black cloud hanging over my health and my future. Please don't make us sweat it out while our friends are getting sick and passing away in their early 30s about whether or not this program will be here to protect us. And certainly don't ask us to tell people who get sick 2 years from now that they got cancer a year too late, so there's nothing we can do for them. Instead of ending this program, let's end the charade where we all go down to Washington and beg Congress to care about us after experiencing a health crisis that the government's own policies helped create. So to the Senate and to the majority leader, if you actually care about this issue as much as your September #NeverForget posts would suggest, let's schedule a vote. Let's get this done. Let's ensure that the VCF will be here for all of us, even us young survivors, in the future. And let's agree that if we care about this issue a lot in September, we can also care about it in July. Thank you so much.
Yes. My most vibrant memory of 9/11 is when you went to the site, it was always silent. Work sites usually have a lot of noise, but when you went to 9/11, it was so quiet. And if they thought they found someone, they'd blow a whistle and you couldn't hear anything. Everybody was trying to find someone. And I want to end this with a moment of silence, but for those that we've lost and those that are suffering. But first, I'd like to read a message from Joe Zadroga, a retired police officer, the father of James Zadroga. We named the bill after James Zadroga. He was the first person to be diagnosed as being sick and dying from 9/11 related illnesses. It happened in New Jersey with a doctor in New Jersey because no doctor in New York was saying there was a connection. There was a resistance to it, and there was a resistance to him. So we named it. His family fought with us. And then Ray Pfeiffer became the voice of the movement. At first, he was totally well. He was totally well, and he came with us down to Washington to work for his sick brethren. Later, he became sick. He came to every single meeting, no matter how painful it was to him, to work for a cure and for funding for it and for the compensation. And Luis Alvarez, we all heard his moving, incredible statement. All of them are inspirations. And I quote from Joe Zadroga. The Zadroga family is honored to have the names of both Ray Pfeiffer and Luis Alvarez alongside of their beloved James. Joe, Linda, and Tyler Ann look forward to the enactment of this legislation. The heroes of 9/11 should be entitled to the dignity of health care and the peace of mind of compensation. Most importantly, never again should heroes the likes of Ray and Lou be forced to choose between begging Congress for help or spending their last days with their loved ones. God bless our heroes. God bless the great United States of America. And a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who came. Are there any questions? Just a final, I want to thank Bing Shavat, my former chief of staff, Andrew Lowenthal, and Mike Iger for all of their work, and my entire staff. It became a priority.
We've been watching a press conference at Ground Zero. Lawmakers are calling on the Senate to move quickly in passing the bill to permanently extend the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund. 9/11 first responders and advocates were there, along with Senator Chuck Schumer, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, and Congressman Jerry Nadler. They are asking Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to bring the bill up for a vote and quickly pass it. The bill passed in the House last week. In recent weeks, McConnell vowed to bring the bill up for a vote before the Senate's August 2nd recess.